Hey everyone, Zach here. Welcome to the 23rd lesson of this RTS tutorial series. In this week's lessons, we will set up our Marquee or RTS style box selector. In this part, we will begin by giving players the ability to draw a marquee on the screen. On Friday, we will give this marquee functionality. With regards to the vote from last week, viewers selected lesson plans for entire sections and not for individual videos. Therefore, over this week I will begin recording and uploading lesson plans for this section and sections 2 and 3. That said, fire up your editor, and I will see you on the other side. So here we are back in our editor. We have a fair amount to do to get our marquee to show up. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a library, or sorry, an interface. And I keep that in my library folder for some reason in this version. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click, blueprint, and we are going to do a blueprint interface. And this will be RTS Marquee Selection IF for interface. And in this one, we are going to have three functions we need. We need a on input start. An input in this case means when the user has hit the button that you have set as your primary action. In my case, this will be the left mouse button. We need a on input hold, so this is when they're holding the button down. And then finally, we need a last little bit here, which is what happens when they release that, which will be on input release, which I'm going to rename not to have that weird capital E in the middle there. There we go. And we need to add one input to this, which is our hold time. How long have they held the button down for? And that'll be of type float. I'm just going to compile and save this. I'm going to very quickly just add this to my player controller before I forget to do that. And go into class settings, go to add, type in marquee, and it will add it in. I'm going to compile and save that. I'm going to then go to my blueprints folder. I'll leave this open, so we'll come back to it in a tiny bit. And you already see I have a folder here called HUD. I was testing something, I forgot to delete this. Right click, create a folder called HUD like this. Even though we already have HUDs, what we're actually putting in here is a true game HUD in the terms of what is classed as a HUD in Blueprint. So in the new HUD folder, right click, go to Blueprint class, and then in all classes, search HUD. And then select it, and this will be RTS Marquee, and that's one reason why I hate autosave. RTS Marquee Selection BP. Open that up, pin that to the top, go to your class defaults, or class settings, that is, not class defaults, and type in marquee, find the selection interface, put that in there, compile, save, return to your event graph, and delete these two nodes. We will cast off to the controller at the very beginning, and we're not going to create a macro for it. You know, we can if we want. It's just one reference we need. So I don't tend to, create macros for that as much as I used to. Actually, I don't tend to create macros for that at all. And we are going to do a cast to RTS player controller, BP, right click it, and go down to convert to pure cast. At this point, if you can't cast to your controller, you're running into other more significant issues than the marquee selection not working. You're running into issues such as you cannot move the camera pawn full stop. Off your pure cast to the controller, promote to variable. This will be our controller ref as in reference. Plug that in, and I'm just going to put this into my usual references folder. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to get the our input select from our interface. So I'm going to right click here. Actually, I'm going to compile and save first. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to type in on input start, not select, and I want to add event. And you'll notice that it still is calling that interface function. You'll see that little icon there. It'll even say it's from the interface. And just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to create a new variable that we're not going to use in this outside of just creating a branch here. And this will be selected units. Please notice the plural. That is important. I will be using a singular form of this later on. And this will be RTS unit master. I'm not sure I typed in RTS there. And it will be an array. And I'm just going to put this in a category of units. I'm just going to drag this out. And we are going to do last index. The reason why we're using last index is if the last index is less than 0, then there is nothing in the index. If it is equal to or greater than 0, then there is something there. So we're going to use equal to or greater. We're going to leave it at 0. We're going to create a branch off of this. We're only going to worry about half this branch today. The other half will be in the episode later this week, which will be when we set up our unit selection. The next thing we want to do is we're going to worry about our auth then. So we're saying we have nothing in this index because we don't. So what we want then is to worry about that auth, as I mentioned. But before we can even do that, we need to actually create some variables. And the easiest way to create those variables is, actually, sorry, we're going to do that in the auth. I was thinking about an older version of this I did. Ignore what I was about to say. So off this false branch, what we're going to do is we're going to do a controller reference. We're going to get it. We are going to get mouse position. And you can use mouse position scaled by DPI if you want. And we're going to make vector 2D. We're going to plug that in. And now we're going to have a new variable coming from this. And this will be where the user first clicks down on the screen. So we're going to, promote to variable. I like calling this clicked location, or you can call it start location or something similar. And this will be my marquee variables. And I'm just going to set this on that false, as I mentioned. Just going to move this over so it's a little bit neater. So if we have nothing in this array, which we shouldn't at the start because, we haven't put anything into it yet, then automatically go to this false, set our clicked location. And what's going to be a little bit weird is we're going to create a new variable off of this, and this will be holding location. Now, holding location will change. Why we are setting it, by the way, I just changed the category. Why we're setting it off click location is this resets the holding location to whatever click location is. We do not want to reset this to say 0, 0. The mouse is in, say the mouse is in position 2045 for some reason over where, I'm not sure where that will be on the screen. It's over here, and 0, 0 is over here. That's going to draw the box from here up this way, all the way over there, and back down. We don't want that. The next thing I want to create a boolean off of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to name it isDrawing. So is the user drawing? This will be a single variable type, and again, it will be a boolean. And as you guys know, I love my little bool folder. Oh, why? I have an affection for it. What can I say? Alright, I'll stop making bad jokes. So that covers what we need to do for the on input start for this video. We will then, let's just quickly do our on input release, which we won't be doing much for. We'll just be doing on input release. Again, we want this to be a event. Again, it's calling from the interface we've created. And we are going to take our bool, we're going to put it back in here, we're going to turn drawing off, and then we're going to have something else come off of this in the second video, which will be passing some information along to our controller. But we'll worry about that later. And next bit we want to do is we want to actually create a HUD. And what I mean by create the HUD is when we have add to viewport, we're going to have something similar to that in this. And that's why this Boolean is very important. We don't want this marquee showing up all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in event receive, participant receive. If I can get that C to show up there, thank you. Receive draw HUD. So this will draw something onto the screen. That's what this is all about. We do not want this showing up all the time. We only want it showing up when we're drawing. So we're going to create a branch. So we determine the drawing when they click down on the mouse and when they release it. So if they're drawing, then we have things for them to do. And what they're going to do is they're going to, we'll have a sequence off of this. And it's going to do a couple of things. We'll only worry about pin 0 in this episode and pin 1 in the next episode. So with regards to pin 0, we're going to create a custom event that it's going to be called by that pin. And we'll do custom event. And this will be draw marquee. So we're going to draw our marquee selection box. And all we need to do here then is do draw marquee. So it's calling our function. Yep, it's calling our function. And yes, technically these are functions. And what we want in here is our clicked location. We're going to get that. And we want to break this into its y and x vector. Remember, y is up and down, x is left and right in this case. And we are going to then drag off of here and type in draw rect for a rectangle. And I'm just going to plug that into the x, plug that into the y. If you're curious about, making sure, for debugging purposes, if you're curious to make sure it's drawing correctly, leave this box on. But if you're not, if you don't want to see a black box show up when you click down, actually I'm going to leave it on now to show you what it does. We're going to then drag off of this, and we're going to do another draw rect. And what each draw rect is, this is a single point. This is the point where we click down. We now need the point where we click off the screen, or where we're dragging our mouse along the screen. So we'll take our holding location out, and we will just break our vector again. Let's just move that over here, and that will be, again, our x and our y. And then finally, we have a little bit of a fun one. We're going to do a third draw rect, and this is the most important of the three, really, for what we're looking for. This is the marquee selection box area itself. So this is the starting point of it. So if I click down here, a small box would show up. As I drag the mouse, this box is moving under the mouse. When I come here, it's going to fill in that box here. So to do that, we're going to grab our select location. We're going to set it a little bit further back. We are going to just drag it back a little bit. We're going to break it. We're going to plug the x and the y into the x and the y. And you've noticed we've been ignoring these w and h's. Well, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to duplicate it down here real quick just so I have it ready. I'm going to plug that into w and into h. And I'm going to grab my holding location. I'm not going to plug my holding location directly into this. I'm going to back drag and do vector 2D minus vector 2D. I'm going to want a little bit more room, I think. So I'm just going to move that over there a tiny bit. And what I want to do is I want to plug in the holding location to the top here. And I'm going to move just these pins a tiny bit closer to the draw rect there. Actually, I should move you too. I can put a reroute in. Thank you. And plug that reroute into here. Just going to put another one in to make it a little bit cleaner looking. So otherwise it's going to bother me. So now what we're doing is we are taking the information from our clicked location. As we drag it, we get that other box, and then it's going to create when we finally release it, it will create this actual area. Now, right now it's going to do, if we had this activated completely, is it draw a opaque black box we can't see through. We don't want that. I'm going to use a light blue box that is partially see-through. So I'm going to first worry about my alpha. I'm going to set that to 0.6, so it has a transparency of a slight transparency. I am going to then just move this into the blue area. I'm going to set my numbers based on my file, which is 200. Again, not being a visual person, I prefer just setting numbers. It makes me feel better as a human being for some reason. And that will be 3, 6 there. And then our blue is the one we want the most of. So we want 0.761. There we go. So we get that nice little blue. As if I'm going to leave these black boxes on for now. I'll probably turn them off in the next video. Going to compile and save. And that completes our actually drawing of the marquee, outside of one thing. We haven't really updated this position. Right now, we've only reset it. So now we need to tell it to update this position. To do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to, actually I'm going to do this up here where we set, near where we set it. We're going to do on event hold. And this again is calling from our interface. I spelled input there wrong, so let me go back into that real quick and fix that. And that should be input. There we go. Compile, save. You'll notice you'll need to compile both of these now as well. Oh, never mind. What we're going to do is we're just going to set the holding location. And what we're going to set it by is the same thing we did right here. We're going to get our controller, our mouse position, and our 2D vector. And we're just going to paste that right over here and plug it on in. So now what's happening is we've actually set up our marquee to draw. It will come in, it will check that we have no selected units. It will then set a clicked location. So our start location, it will reset our holding location, and it'll say we're drawing. As we're drawing, it will not activate this. So if we're drawing, it will receive the HUD, and it will draw the HUD. It will do some selection stuff down here. To draw the HUD, it will draw a single black point for the starting point. As we move the mouse, it will draw a second black point for the holding location. And when we release it, or as we're drawing, it will put in, or as we're moving our mouse, sorry, it will create this transparent blue box. So what we need to do then is to activate this HUD in two different ways. First, let's go back to our main window, go to your game settings, go to your game mode. We need to set our HUD in the game controller, or game mode to RTS Marquee Selection, compile, save, close that out, and now we need to go to our player controller. And our player controller, what we're going to do is we're going to move down here because we have a lot of things that will actually go into this. And I just want to make sure that I have enough room. So I'm just going to go a little bit further down. About here should be fine. And I'm going to do input action. Sorry, I'm going to do primary action. I don't know why I said input action. I'll put the input in for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, thinking towards the future, I'm going to create a new bool variable. I'm going to create is building mode active, because I want to use this in building mode as well. And of course this will be a bool variable, and I'm going to do a branch. So I'm going to do branch is building mode active, and I'm going to put a reroute node into that just because we need a little bit of room to play with this nicely. I'm just going to line that up there. There we go. I'm going to copy or duplicate that branch down here. Actually, I'm going to duplicate that with the reroute node. That'll make my life a tiny bit easier. There we go. Just drag that out so it's not directly over it. We can see it a bit better. So we need to worry about the pressed and released. So on the press, what we want to do, what we want to do is we want to go all the way back up here for a second. We want to go into our reference casts. We need to create a reference to this HUD so we can actually call it up. So to do so, what we're going to do is we are going to unhook that output pen. We're going to drag off of here. Sorry, we're not going to drag off there. We're going to right click down here. We're going to type in HUD. get HUD. Off of this, we're going to cast to our our Marquee Selection HUD. Put that into there. And we want to create a variable from this, so this will be our Marquee ref. And now we can just go ahead and plug that into the output there. And move your reference into your references category. You might just see it there. Compile and save. Close out your reference cast. And in your event graph, let's go back down all the way to where we've created this area. Might have made it too far down here, but whatever. We can fix that later on. We want to grab our reference to the HUD, or to the Marquee HUD, that is, and we want to then drag off of this, and we're going to type in input start. And you'll notice we have our call function, and we have our class. We want neither of these, so click context sensitive. And what we want is a message. We've done on some of the other UI interfaces we have. UI interfaces, that's a bit redundant. Plug that into the false. And we'll worry about the true when we get into the next section. What we want to do is we then want to drag off of, well, actually we want to create the variables first. We want to create a variable known as holding time, which will be of type float. And this will be part of the information we're going to pass into it. We want to reset holding time at this point when they click down to 0. We're going to set holding time elsewhere in this blueprint, but we'll do that in a bit. And the next thing we want to do is we want to know, are they holding this input down? So we're going to create another boolean called is holding input. And we'll move that into our bool folder. We'll set our holding time into a folder in a second, or a category in a second. We're going to set it there, and we want that to be set to true. Alright, next what we're going to do on the false branch, and again, sorry, on the released branch, and then off the false branch, because we aren't in building mode, and I'm just going to compile and save real quick, is we want to send a message to the system saying what to do on the release. So what we're going to do on release is we're going to drag off of here. Actually, we're not going to drag off of there. We're going to take our Marquee Select, and we are going to put it there. We're going to get it. We're going to do release, or sorry, input release. And again, you want that on input release message. Drag it into there, plug it into the false, and now I'm going to right click and I'm going to turn context sensitive back on. And I'm going to drag this holding time and just set it into there. Right now it's set to 0. Sorry if you can hear my dog snoring in the background. And then I'm going to take my is input holding and we're going to turn that off. They're no longer holding the controller down. So the next bit I want to do is I want to set this is holding time part. And I'm going to do that with 2 different nodes. So the first node I need to worry about is an event tick. Simply, I'm going to do a tick. We have our event tick here. And I'm going to drag out this delta seconds, and I'm going to promote this to a variable. And this will be our delta time. So we've now set our delta time. This will constantly update, so we always have that as something we can use. And then off of here, I'm going to drag out a branch. And I want to know, are we drawing? So, or sorry, are we holding our input down? If we're holding our input down, then I want to update my holding time. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom event. And this will be update selection. It's our selection marquee. And I'm just going to, off the true here, type in update, or make a reference to that, or call that function. Update selection. There we go. And then on this update selection, I'm going to be a bit redundant, just to be on the safe side. I'm going to duplicate this branch, and I'm going to check, are we actually really truly holding the mouse down? Because if we're not, I want you to stop doing this, please, kind of thing. And we're going to grab our holding time, and we're going to set it on the true. And we're going to then make it equal to a float plus a float. So the two floats we want are our holding time. So we get our current holding time, which will start at 0, and we're going to add it to our delta time. And then it will update again the next tick. It will get what the new holding time is here, and I'll add it to the new delta time. And then the final bit I want to do off of this is grab our marquee reference one more time. We're going to get it, and we are going to do on input hold. Again, I'm going to turn context sensitive off, do it as a message, right click, turn context sensitive back on, and plug it in here. So let's just make sure this works correctly. Compile, save. We're going to do a save all. We're going to hit play, and you can see we have our selection boxes. I'm going to zoom in a bit. We even can still scroll while we are doing it. So to go over what is happening in a little bit more detail, just really quickly, is when we, in our controller, press down our primary action, it checks, are we in building mode? Since we don't have a building mode yet, it goes to false automatically. And it then goes, alright, activate in the marquee HUD this on input start, which checks, do we have any selected units? Since we don't yet, next video we will. That will be a no. It then says, alright, where is the mouse currently? And also set where, the moving mouse to that same spot. Let's go back to our controller, and then it sets our holding time back to 0, and it says our holding input is true, so we're holding the button down. If that's true, we are going to be updating our holding time. If we're updating our selection, we're updating our holding time in it. We are also updating our mouse location. So, sorry, that's the interface part. We go from the interface to our HUD, and it says, hey, as you continue to hold that button down, tell me where that mouse now is, which is why we're doing it off the tick. We want it to be fairly quick. We don't want it to be rather slow, where it's a sort of jerky motion. So that is what happens as you're holding the mouse down. When you release the mouse button, it checks again, are we in building mode? Because we'll have a different response for that there, potentially. And it will then check, will then send a message, not check, the input release on the HUD. We'll also turn off the is input holding or is holding input, so this bit stops firing and we're not wasting resources. So if we go to our HUD on the input release, which is right over here, sorry, all we're doing, I was looking for my other version of it, where I have a couple more nodes on. All we're doing is releasing turning off the drawing as false. Now, I skipped a bit when we're holding it down and we're creating that HUD. It's setting that, drawing true bit. What that is doing is activating this branch off our receive HUD, which then draws our HUD. Again, the missing parts that I was looking for up here and the missing part down here will be related to unit selection. So our draw HUD draws a black box, which for some reason we didn't see, so I'm just going to go ahead and set this to an alpha of 0 anyway for our starting location. As we move our mouse, as previously discussed, it draws another little black box, which again we can just set that to an alpha of 0. And between those two locations, it creates our transparent blue box. So just to make sure that it still works after doing that, there you go. And that concludes the marquee selection, or drawing the marquee selection video. In the next video, we'll actually do unit selection. And we'll need to consider some things with regards to, say, how units versus ground units versus vehicles will work. And there are a few options, and because I'm going to present 2 ways to do the ground vehicles, there will be a couple of ways to actually think about that part. But we'll get to that in a couple of episodes. That said, if you like this video, hit that like button, put some comments down below about what you want to see, or what works in the series, or what doesn't work in this series, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Also, as always, I hope that you have a wonderful day.